Just take a look. Very little need be said. And very little can be said to adequately describe the beauty. Sunlight glistening off the water, coral heads rising up to touch the sky.
There where the wave is breaking along, the reef, that's the reef crest. So the reef, at some point, where a reef is emergent, it grows towards the sea surface.
A very special place both above and below the surface.
We're blessed. We're blessed to have this as our backyard.
And your playground.
Playground. This is our office, actually.
This is the longest barrier reef in the Western Hemisphere, the second longest in the world. 300 kilometers of stunning coral colors and varieties stretch from one end of the Central American country of Belize to the other. What worries you the most?
What's going to be left down the road? What's going to happen a few years from now if we continue this pattern? What's going to happen? So that's a bit of a concern. I try not to worry about it. So.
Kira Castillo is a marine biologist at the Holchan Marine Reserve.
This is an acropora. This is or elkhorn, the common name, the elkhorn coral. This is a species that we're working with. This is a gorgonian. It's a sea fan, so it's a coral, but it's a soft coral, so it's the kind of type that sways. So this is a fire coral. This is the one that you definitely don't want to touch, that burns you.
Despite how pristine its appearance, the reef, home to some 1,400 species, is under siege. Changes in water salinity, toxins, and sea surface temperature increase caused by climate change are taking a toll. As the water temperature rises, events called coral bleaching are becoming more common. The corals lose their natural color, turn white, and become less resistant to disease. Scientists say since 1998, some 40% of the reef has sustained some damage.
We could collect the data on the bleaching. We could adjust, we could expand the protected areas. We could do things like that to target things like climate change and coral bleaching.
For Castillo and other marine scientists, saving the world's reefs for a few more generations is perhaps the most they can hope for. In the long term, climate change is a real threat for the reef. But in the near future, it's coastal development. Ambergris Cay has become a tourist mecca. The reef is so close to the island, you can just about swim to it. Here, the water is not just for the fish, it's always filled with schools of tourists.
This is one of the recreational areas for the reserve, so people come here to dive and snorkel.
Nadia Boud is a reef scientist with the World Wildlife Fund. Development of hotels and resorts on Ambergris and other islands has exploded in recent years. Boud and Castillo both believe growth must be better managed, or it will ultimately destroy the reason people come here in the first place, the reef.
We need to put in place effective management on the ground and put those policies that, and legislation in place that can then guide how we develop into the future. So if we do not do that, then the future would be bleak, definitely, for marine environment, for a reef system.
We still want to provide the tourism side, the jobs for the tour guides. There's a reason they go to the reserve. You know, they can guarantee their guests that they're going to see a healthy reef. They can guarantee that they're going to see fish. But how do we continue to support them from a livelihood perspective while ensuring that the ecosystem, which is our main focus, stays healthy?
The reef is one of the most important economic drivers in Belize. It is estimated that at least half of the country's population of 340,000 benefit in some way from the reef. Tourism brings in $200 million a year. Commercial fishing, another $15 million. But that would be insignificant, a drop of money compared to the buckets full of cash if there is oil out there. The possibility that the waters off Belize could one day look like the Gulf of Mexico dotted with oil and gas rigs has environmentalists deeply troubled.
Yes, oil has been a very, very major concern for us.
Pressure from environmental groups led the government to impose in September an indefinite moratorium on offshore oil exploration.
Oh, oil and reef, they do not coexist at all. You cannot have, you cannot expect to have oil exploration and a healthy reef system and a healthy economy that is dependent on the biodiversity and the physical buffer that is being provided by the reef system.
The moratorium is only indefinite. It's not permanent. The specter of offshore oil drilling still looms large.
I guess here in the north, it is a huge impact. It would be a huge impact if there was any type of drilling. But I've always been of the, and this is my personal thing, that while oil is a threat, and it would be a threat, so it's good that the legislation is being put in place now to prevent it.
The dilemma is this. The government needs new sources of revenue besides tourism and agriculture. Oil could provide that. But no one knows how much oil is out there. A little or a lot? Michael Parafit is the Belize Attorney General.
I think we're benefiting enough from the way things are offshore that we should be very cautious into how we move in. We would have to have evidence that tells us, look, you stick a pin out there, it could reap bounties for your country and solve a lot of your problems. We would have to know for sure almost, and in the oil business, you can't be sure. So that's where we find ourselves right now.
Publicly, government officials like Parafit and Deputy Prime Minister Patrick Faber appear reluctant to sacrifice the reef for holes in the ocean that could come up empty.
If we could find an area on land that is safe for exploration and we make that kind of finding, hooray, but we're not going to go out of our way to destroy what we have in order to find monies from oil.
People say they don't coexist. Oil drilling and the reef can't coexist.
I would say that if there is a safe way to get it and benefit from it, why not? But at the same time, you don't want to destroy your environment and your beautiful reef and sea for just a little bit of oil. That's not going to work fixing the damage that you would have caused.
Kira Castillo is concerned that by the time anyone ever drills for oil, the reef may no longer matter.
We might not have to worry about the oil. It might already been damaged by the time they start drilling for oil. So it's what we do now. What are the things that we need to change now? Because yeah, there is a ban on oil, but development might just destroy the very same thing that we're hoping that the oil won't destroy.
While the threat appears overwhelming, environmentalists and scientists remain, if nothing else, determined. In Belize, across the Caribbean, and in the Florida Keys, work is being done to grow corals in undersea gardens. The corals are then transplanted to damaged reef areas. The work is showing promise. The transplants appear to be thriving. The Belize Reef, while feeling the pressure from both nature and humans, is, scientists say, holding its own. But there is a tipping point that will be reached, perhaps in a year or a decade from now or in 100 years. But for now, this great reef remains one of the planet's most spectacular wonders. Just take a look. Very little need be said.